George Mallory and Andrew Irvine. In the spring of 1924, a group of British expeditions set out to conquer Mount Everest summit for the first time in history. The daring team included two figures that later left a haunting mark on the world: George Mallory, a seasoned British climber, and the 22-year-old young and hopeful Andrew "Sandy" Irvine, a fellow expedition member. Noel Adele was also a name who struggled through this endeavor. The team chose to climb on the Tibetan north side of the mountain because Nepal was off limits to foreigners at the time. Mallory and Irvine set off on their summit attempt on June 6 from the North Col at around 7,000 meters, 22,966 feet, accompanied by a few Tibetan helpers. The next day, they reached their last high camp at around 8,200 meters. There, the last Tibetans turned back and took a note from Mallory to Noel Adele. "We'll probably start early tomorrow, the 8th, to have clear weather," it read. In the note, Mallory also indicated where and approximately when Adele would likely see them the next day. When the cloud cover briefly broke on June 8th, Adele thought he saw two moving dots on a rock step on the northeast ridge, supposedly his two fellows. After that, their trail was completely lost. When there was no sign of Mallory and Irvine, Adele climbed once more to the last high camp, and from there a little further, but a violent storm forced him to turn back. Then, the monsoon made a further search impossible. From that moment, a shroud of mystery swallowed them. They never returned. In 1999, Mallory's frozen body was found at 8,159 meters, battered from a deadly fall with a broken leg and severe head injuries. But Irvine's fate remained unknown until now. One of the most popular yet unresolved questions about this dreadful loss was, did they make it? Eventually, there was no proof of whether the two climbers had successfully reached the summit. A small Kodak camera with which they wanted to document their ascent was never found. Green boots. Swang Paor. The legendary green boots that became the saddest moment on Mount Everest. People believe that this is all that's left of Swang Palor, an Indian mountaineer. He joined the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, ITBP, and was chosen to go on India's first trip to Everest via the Northeast Ridge. In 1996, Palor and 5 other experienced climbers in the ITBP team set out on his risky mission. But they missed out on how swiftly and severely the weather can change on Everest, especially when the group put themselves in a risk by going past the 2 p.m. safety deadline. So, they decided to keep going up even though they were told to turn back. As Swang Palor and his friends got closer to the top of Mount Everest, an unexpected and powerful blizzard hit them. The weather at the top of the tallest mountain in the world went from clear skies to a roaring storm in just a few seconds. The snow swirled angrily around the climbers. Very soon, these men had to deal with being at high altitude, being wary, and being in a location that had quickly become deadly. The climbers had no choice but to return despite not reaching the peak yet. Their descent turned into a frenzied effort to find their way through the blinding snow and deadly winds. The group got disoriented and confused as they tried to go down. Palor just lost track of the others. He was alone and up against the harsh forces of nature when he sought refuge in a limestone cave at around 8,500 meters, 27,900 feet. It was there that he gave in to exhaustion, frostbite, and the cruel void of the mountain summit zone. His body, clad in vividly green cufflack boots, remained frozen, crouched, as if resting and untouched by time. Later, people called this deceased climber Green Boots. For decades, the frozen body had been lying in this cave. Over the years, his lifeless form became the most dreadful landmark for mountaineers battling the same merciless climb. Enjoy the video so far? Thrilling stories are on the way. That is, if you're ready to embrace the upcoming haunting sense of the most tragic deaths on Everest. David Sharp. The David Sharp case was another tragic death. Sharp was a skilled English climber who had conquered major peaks such as the Matterhorn, Elbrus, and Kilimanjaro. His passion for mountains eventually steered him to Mount Everest. What makes him special is his philosophy of no supplemental oxygen during such dangerous endeavors. Sharp believed that reaching the summit without artificial aid was a more genuine accomplishment, as he had ascended Cho Oyo with no extra oxygen in 2002. It's noticeable that Sharp had attempted to conquer Mount Everest 2 times in 2003 and 2004, but didn't succeed, making his way on May 14, 2006. Sharp was determined to go alone without any guides or oxygen support. There is no definitive record of him reaching the summit. However, some climbers believed they saw someone fitting Sharp's description near the summit area. Some suspected that he might have reached or nearly reached the summit before encountering difficulties on his descent. As Sharp descended from the summit, he sought refuge in the infamous Green Boots Cave. This is where the frozen body of Swang Palor lies. Climbers later reported seeing Sharp huddled in the cave and thought he was either resting or already deceased. A team of Turkish climbers passed Sharp in the early hours of May 15th. They observed him alive, but in a dire state, suffering from severe frostbite and oxygen depletion. They couldn't help much due to their own limited oxygen supplies and the harsh conditions. Later, another commercial expedition encountered Sharp. They noted his perilous condition, but felt unable to render effective aid due to his critical state and their expedition's priorities. Two climbers noted that Sharp was too far gone to really be able to do anything. Sharp's last words to a Sherpa who had tried to help him were, "My name is David Sharp. I'm with Asian Trekking, and I just want to sleep." In time, Sharp succumbed to the harsh conditions and died painfully on the mountain. He was 34 years old. Hannelore Schmatz. Hannelore Schmatz. She was a skilled and committed climber and got married to her husband, Gerard, who shared the same passion for mountains. Together, they went on numerous climbs expeditions across the globe, conquering peaks like Manaslu, Lhotse, and the Alps, and the Andes still. Everest represented the pinnacle of her mountaineering dreams. In the fall of 1979, the couple began their expedition in a team of 13 that later split into two groups. The first time included Gerard, making him the oldest person to reach the summit at the age of 50. The second team, which included Hannelore, set off for the summit at 5 a.m. on October 2nd under good conditions. However, Gerard warned Hannelore via walkie-talkie that the weather was deteriorating. He suggested it might be better to call off the summit attempt. Hannelore and the second team decided to go for it anyway. Under heavy snow and wind, they successfully reached the summit between 1 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. The descent was disastrous. Hannelore, exhausted and battling the severe conditions, became too weak to continue. She bivouacked at an altitude of 28,000 feet or 8,500 meters, even though the Sherpa guides asked the team to keep descending. After spending a ruthless night enduring high winds and extreme cold in the death zone, Hannelore was determined to survive and continue the ascent with a Sherpa. But on the way down, her body could no longer endure the difficult situation. She sat down whispering, "Water, water," to her Sherpa before slipping into eternal silence. Her body was left on the steep slopes and remained exposed for years. Gerard reflected on the event, stating, "The team came home, but I alone, without my beloved Hannelore." The 39-year-old adventurer's painful death marked the first woman to die on Everest, and later became a ghostly reminder for the following waves of climbers. Yasuko Namba. Yasuko Namba, a 47-year-old businesswoman from Tokyo, Japan. Before Everest, Namba had already conquered 6 of the 7 summits, and so she was strongly motivated to become the second Japanese female climber in history to scale the highest mountain on every continent. Her expedition began in May 1996, the deadliest year for Everest mountaineers. After successfully reaching the top, she was descending from a high point at the mountain. That was when a snowstorm hit while she was still there relatively late in the afternoon. Namba and several other climbers in her group were stranded on the South Col due to a whiteout and were unable to locate their tent. Despite running out of oxygen, Namba persistently tried to breathe through her mask. The storm's cruel grip, the vicious cold, and extreme exhaustion overwhelmed her fragile body. The guides concluded it was useless and unsafe to try to move the group toward the camp, so they insisted on waiting for a break in the storm. Later on, a guide headed out from Camp 4 at night to search for these stranded climbers and help several return safely. However, he left Namba and another woman behind, thinking that they were either dead or hopeless to save. The next day, a search team was put together to find the rest. Yet again, they left the 2 women alone because they were both in such bad state and unlikely to survive long enough to be taken down to base camp. While her companion managed to stay alive and return to camp on foot, Namba never did. She passed away on her own in the dead of night from tiredness and exposure to the mountain's harsh elements. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and tell me which story you want next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.